What happens when the family you thought you knew is hiding secrets deeper than you ever imagined? In this story, a young woman named Sarah uncovers a hidden past filled with poverty, betrayal, and a desperate fight for survival. After her mother disappears without a trace, Sarah is left to care for her little sister and to unravel the mystery of her family's dark secrets. From shadowy strangers and mysterious messages to a dangerous man with a hidden agenda, this journey takes Sarah from her broken hometown to a small forgotten town where the truth finally comes to light. But even when justice seems within reach, the real challenge is knowing who to trust. This is a story about courage, sacrifice, and fighting for the family you love, no matter the cost. Growing up, our front door was always wide open, metaphorically anyway. Friends, neighbors, random folks from church, they all walked in like it was their second home. People used to say our house had this warm, welcoming energy. But if they had stayed long enough to hear what went on after dinner, they'd have known better. I was 10 the first time I realized something wasn't right. My little sister, Jenny, had just turned 5, and Mom had baked one of those boxed vanilla cakes with the overly sweet frosting she always said tasted like toothpaste. Jenny smiled anyway, proud of her cake, happy just to have something with candles. Dad wasn't home. He never was on birthdays. Said he had to work, even on Sundays. But I knew he was lying. I'd seen the receipts in his coat pocket once. Liquor store, some motel 2 towns over, and once even a jewelry shop. Not for Mom, that was for sure. We didn't talk about it, though. Talking about things in our house was like flipping on a light switch in a room full of sleeping bears. Best to keep quiet and tiptoe around. Mom used to be different. That's what my Aunt Rhonda told me during one of her rare surprise visits. Your mom had dreams once, she said, sipping her soda like it had answers at the bottom of the can. But reality chewed her up. Now she's just surviving. That word stuck with me, surviving. I started to think of our family as a tree with roots in concrete. We might still be standing, but we weren't going anywhere. Then the gas got shut off in the middle of January. We were already boiling water on the stove just to have a warm bath. That month, we couldn't even do that. I remember sitting in my jacket under a pile of blankets with Jenny, watching our breath fog up in the living room. I asked Mom what we were supposed to do now. She didn't answer. She just sat there, staring into space with the kind of look that makes you wonder if her mind had walked out that open front door and never came back. That night, I heard her crying in the bathroom with the door locked. That was the only door in the house she ever locked. But we still went to school. We still smiled when teachers asked how things were at home. We still told people, everything's fine, until it wasn't. The change started with a knock. It was late March, cold and muddy outside, when someone knocked on the door just after dark. Mom looked out the window and went pale. Then she told us to go to our room and keep the door closed. I listened through the vent. I heard a man's voice. Deep, polite, but something about it made my skin crawl. He said things like, I just need a few minutes, and it's important we speak face to face. Then I heard Mom say something I never expected. I told you I burned it. All of it. There's nothing left. Burned what? I sat there next to Jenny, who was busy coloring on the back of an old bill envelope. She didn't understand what was going on, but I knew then that my mom was hiding something big. And for the first time in my life, I started to wonder if we were in danger. Turns out, we were, just not in the way I expected. A few days later, I came home from school and found Mom gone. Not at the store. Not next door. Gone. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter, scribbled in shaky handwriting. I'm sorry. I had to go. Take care of Jenny. There's more in the attic. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there staring at that note while Jenny ran into the kitchen asking for crackers. She was too young to understand. I made her some peanut butter toast and told her Mom would be back soon. That was the first of many lies I'd have to tell. That night, after Jenny fell asleep, I pulled down the old attic ladder. I hadn't been up there in years. It smelled like mothballs and wood rot, the kind of place you imagine ghosts living in. But Mom had left something up there. A box, duct-taped shut, with a note on top. Don't trust anyone until you've read everything. Inside the box, papers, old letters, newspaper clippings, and one worn photo of a man I didn't recognize, standing beside a woman who looked a lot like my mom. Only younger, happier. I sat there under the bare attic light bulb, flipping through the pieces of our family's past. And with every page, I started to realize that the truth about our family had been buried long before the bills piled up and the lights went out. And that front door? It had never really been open. Not in the way people thought. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in the attic with a flashlight in one hand and those old papers in the other, trying to piece together what Mom had kept hidden for so long. The first few things were easy to understand. An old high school transcript, some letters between her and a man named Daniel, and a worn envelope labeled, Do Not Forget. Inside that one was a black and white photograph of a farmhouse, a smiling couple, and what looked like a baby in a knitted cap. On the back, scribbled in faded blue ink, was, Home, 1985. Me, Daniel, and little Emily. Emily? That wasn't my name. And Daniel wasn't my dad. I must have read that note 10 times, hoping I was misunderstanding something. But each piece of paper just made things more confusing. There were letters from someone named June, dozens of them, talking about people I'd never heard of. Most were dated before I was even born. One line from a letter stuck in my mind like a thorn. You were right to run. He would have never let you raise her your way. Who was he? And was I her? I came downstairs the next morning like a zombie, mind spinning, heart pounding. I poured cereal for Jenny and stared at the spoon like it held answers. She didn't ask about Mom. Not yet. She just kept humming a little tune from a cartoon she liked. Kids are like that, resilient and blind to the world crumbling around them. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't want to tell anyone. The last thing I wanted was for us to be split up. I couldn't let Jenny end up in foster care. So I did the only thing I could think of. I called Aunt Rhonda. She showed up 2 hours later in a rush of perfume, worry, and clanking jewelry. As soon as she walked in and saw the note Mom had left, her face turned pale. She said this day might come, she muttered, sitting down heavily on the couch. I just hoped it wouldn't. That was the first time I heard about the other life. Mom's life before she married my dad. The life where she had a different name, a different partner, and a daughter named Emily. A daughter who had died when she was just 2 years old. That's when everything clicked. The photo, the letters, the grief I didn't understand when Mom stared out the window too long. She had been carrying a loss deeper than we ever knew. But that's not the worst part, Rhonda said, lowering her voice. I leaned in. Jenny was in the other room watching cartoons, unaware her world was turning upside down. Your dad wasn't her first love, she continued. He was her escape. After Emily passed, she changed her name, ran from Daniel, and tried to start fresh. But your dad, he wasn't a safe man, either. He knew she was hiding something and used it against her for years. I suddenly remembered those moments when he'd come home late and yell for no reason, when Mom would flinch at certain names, when she burned papers in the fireplace every winter even though we barely had enough wood to heat the house. She stayed for you too, Rhonda whispered. She thought if she could just keep the past buried, maybe it wouldn't hurt anyone anymore. But now the past was clawing its way out of the attic. The man who knocked? Rhonda guessed it was Daniel. He's been looking for her for years. I wouldn't be surprised if he hired someone or found a clue. Maybe he thinks she lied about the baby. Maybe he's angry. I couldn't take it all in. I was just a kid trying to survive poverty, and now I had a missing mom, a mysterious man at our door, and a sister to protect. Rhonda didn't offer to take us in. She had her own troubles, an apartment barely big enough for herself and a job that barely paid her rent. But she did bring us groceries and promised to check in every other day. That night, I locked the doors, something we never used to do, and kept Jenny close. The house felt heavier now, as if the walls had soaked up all the secrets and didn't know how to hold them anymore. Then, 3 days later, I found a letter taped to the outside of our front door. No return address. Just one line scrawled in red pen. You deserve to know the whole truth. Meet me. Alone. I didn't tell Aunt Rhonda about the letter. I didn't tell anyone. For the next couple of days, I kept rereading that single line. You deserve to know the whole truth. Meet me. Alone. No time. No place. Just that message. I didn't know if it was from Daniel or someone pretending to be him, but I felt like I was being watched. Every time I walked Jenny to school, every time I checked the mail, I kept my head on a swivel. Then on Friday, I found another note. This time, it was slipped under the back door. A different handwriting, but the same tone. Cold, quiet, direct. Train station. Saturday, 3:15 p.m. I'll be waiting by the bench under the old clock. That's all it said. I didn't know what to do. I was just a kid, barely able to keep the lights on, and now I had a mystery man from my mother's past dragging me into a puzzle I didn't ask for. But a part of me needed to know. If Mom was in trouble, if there was something dangerous coming our way, I couldn't afford to ignore it. I waited until Rhonda came by the next morning, pretending I had a group project at the library. She agreed to watch Jenny for a few hours, though she gave me that raised eyebrow look like she didn't quite believe me. I hopped the bus and got off 2 blocks from the station. My hands were shaking the whole walk there. The train station was quiet, just a few people lingering around, nobody talking. I spotted the old clock right away. It was barely ticking, one of the hands frozen just past 3. And there he was, a man in his early 50s, maybe older, worn leather jacket, hands shoved deep in his pockets. His eyes met mine like he already knew who I was. You must be Sarah, he said softly. That stopped me cold. Nobody had called me that in years. Emily's sister, he added, his voice a mix of sadness and hope. I didn't sit down. You knew my mom. He gave a small nod. I did. A long time ago. You're Daniel. Another nod. This one slower. Like it hurt. For a second, I just stood there, heart thumping in my ears. Then I finally sat down on the far edge of the bench, just close enough to hear him. Why now? I asked. Why are you coming back into her life after all this time? He looked down at his shoes. I never meant to leave her. I didn't know where she went. One day, she was just gone, with the baby. I searched for years. I pulled the photo from my coat pocket, the one of Mom, Daniel, and the baby labeled Emily. You mean her? His face twisted when he saw it. That's the only photo I ever had of the 3 of us. I didn't even know she kept it. Then he paused, eyes locked on mine. She told me Emily died. I only found out last year that it might not be true. She did die, I said quietly. At least, that's what my aunt told me. Daniel closed his eyes for a second, breathing deep like he was holding back tears. Then why run? Why disappear completely? I didn't have the answer. And clearly, Neither did he. She never told me about you. Not once, I said. And now she's gone. Left a note. Just vanished. Daniel's face paled. Gone? Hasn't left you? I nodded. Told me to take care of my sister and check the attic. He sat back, stunned. She must have known something was coming. Then he reached into his coat pocket and handed me a folded-up envelope. She wrote this. I got it last month, first contact in over a decade. She said she couldn't talk long, but she feared someone had found her. Who? I don't know. But if she's gone, then maybe it wasn't just fear. Maybe it was real. Inside the envelope was a single-page letter written in Mom's familiar, slanted handwriting. She wrote about watching over her kids from a distance. She mentioned regrets. She apologized for never telling the truth. The last line hit the hardest. If you're reading this, I'm sorry I didn't get to explain it all myself. But you'll know who to trust. Look for the photo of the garden. Garden? I sat there stunned, a lump forming in my throat. I don't know what garden she meant, I whispered, but I think I've seen that picture before. Daniel stood up. If you find it, call this number. He handed me a card with just his first name and a phone number. And be careful. If someone else is looking for her, they may not be friendly. I nodded. My legs were numb as I stood and walked away. I didn't know what I believed anymore, but I knew I couldn't go back to pretending everything was normal. When I got home, Rhonda had made mac and cheese and Ginny was busy drawing on the kitchen floor. I thanked her, said I finished the project, and went upstairs. I pulled out the attic box again, dug deeper this time. That's when I found it. A photograph of a flower garden in full bloom, wild and colorful. On the back was a single word, Redfield. And suddenly, the pieces started falling into place. Redfield wasn't just a name. It was a location. And Mom had told me, without telling me, exactly where she went. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept staring at that photo of the flower garden with Redfield scribbled on the back. I searched the name online. It wasn't a flower type or a business or anything simple. It was a town. Small. Quiet. About 2 hours from where we lived. Population, barely a blip. Not even on most maps. But that name stuck out for another reason. I'd heard Mom mention it once, years ago, when I pretended to be asleep on the couch. She'd been talking to Rhonda in a whisper. She said if anything ever happened, she'd go back to Redfield. It's the only place she ever felt safe. That's what Rhonda said. So now it made sense. The note, the letters, the missing pieces. If Mom ran, she ran home. Or at least, to the closest thing she had to it. I didn't tell Rhonda anything yet. I figured the less she knew, the safer she'd be. I told her I had a school project coming up and needed time at the library again. She didn't ask questions this time. Maybe she just trusted me, or maybe she was too tired to keep digging. Either way, the next morning I packed a small backpack, made sandwiches for Ginny and Rhonda to eat later, and took off the second I heard Rhonda's car pull into the driveway. The bus to Redfield wasn't a direct one. I had to take two, switching in a town that smelled like asphalt and sadness. But finally, 5 hours later, I stepped off onto cracked pavement in a town that looked like time had forgotten it. There was no welcome sign, no gas station, just a diner, a church, and a long stretch of dusty road that disappeared into trees. The only thing that stood out was the small garden behind the diner. Bright red tulips, wild daisies, and sunflowers taller than me. I pulled out the photo again. Same garden. Someone had kept it alive all these years. I walked inside the diner, and a small bell rang above the door. A woman in her 60s with gray curls looked up from behind the counter. You look like someone I used to know, she said before I even opened my mouth. I froze. Was her name Claire? The woman blinked hard. Yes, Claire Harper. She was like a daughter to me once. My heart jumped. She's my mom. The woman's face softened, but there was worry behind her eyes. She was here, she said slowly. Not long ago. Stayed in the room out back. Left just before Easter. Seemed spooked. Real quiet. Took the back roads out of here. I felt a lump forming in my throat again. Did she say where she was going? No, the woman said. But she left a package. Told me to give it to a young girl if she ever showed up asking. She walked out of the room and came back with a small wooden box. No lock. Just a sliding lid and a carved symbol on top. 3 flowers in a circle. I opened it slowly. Inside was a stack of Polaroid photos, some keys, and a notebook. The photos were all of me and Ginny, school pictures, backyard snapshots, even one of us at a parade. All taken from a distance. All things I didn't know she had. She'd been watching us. Quietly. Closely. All along. The notebook was full of handwritten notes. Names, places, dates. A timeline. And in the back, a warning. If anything happens to me, protect the kids. The truth is bigger than me now. Someone's watching. Trust no one. Not even Rhonda. That part stopped me cold. Not even Rhonda. What did she mean? Had Mom made a mistake? Or had I? I thanked the woman at the diner, tucked the box carefully into my bag, and stepped back outside. I needed time to think. I needed space. But I didn't get either. Because the second I turned the corner by the post office, I saw something that made my stomach flip. A black car. Parked across from the diner. Same one I'd seen in our neighborhood the week before. Tinted windows. Engine running. And now it was here. Someone was watching. The black car didn't have plates. Not normal ones. Anyway, just a dusty plate cover with no markings. I stopped moving and ducked behind the side of the post office, trying to stay out of view. My mind was racing. Who was in that car? Had they followed me? Were they looking for Mom or me? I peeked around the corner again. The driver's side door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, gray suit, clean-shaven. He didn't look like a local. Didn't move like one either. Too alert. Too polished. He walked straight toward the diner. I held my breath, thinking fast. I couldn't go back the way I came, and if he saw me now, I didn't know what he'd do. Something told me this guy wasn't here for pancakes. Instead of waiting to find out, I ran. I slipped behind the church, climbed over a low fence, and found myself in someone's backyard. I cut through it, scrambled down a hill full of dry leaves, and followed the railroad tracks until the town disappeared behind me. I didn't stop running for a good 10 minutes. When I finally slowed down, I checked the wooden box again. Still there. Still safe. But the warning, trust no one, not even Rhonda, was echoing louder now. What did Mom mean by that? Rhonda had always been the cool aunt. The one who brought candy at Christmas and snuck us $5 bills when Dad wasn't looking. But she'd also been close to him. Too close, sometimes. I remember overhearing them whispering late at night, talking like they shared some secret neither of them wanted Mom to know. Had Rhonda helped him track Mom down? Or worse, was she the reason Mom disappeared? I didn't want to believe it, but the puzzle pieces were starting to fit together in ways I didn't like. I waited until it was almost dark before I hopped on the return bus. My head was pounding, my legs sore, but I clutched that box like my life depended on it. When I got home, Rhonda was still there, sitting on the couch with Jenny curled up next to her, asleep. She looked up and smiled. There you are? You've been gone a while. Yeah, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Lost track of time. You okay? She asked, tilting her head. Fine, I said, walking past her. Just tired. I went straight to my room and locked the door. Then I pulled out the notebook again. I flipped to the back where Mom's handwriting shifted from clean and neat to frantic and hurried. Like she'd written it in a rush. Names were circled, arrows drawn between dates and locations. One name was written 3 times in red ink. Mr. Collins. There was no explanation. Just that name. No address, no phone number. But something told me this Mr. Collins wasn't just some old friend. I snapped a picture of the page with my phone and searched the name alongside Redfield. Only one result popped up. A landowner named Patrick Collins, who ran a farm on the outskirts of town. No website. No reviews. Just a P.O. box and a county record that showed he owned over 100 acres of land. I didn't know what he had to do with Mom, but if she underlined his name that many times, he was important. Maybe even dangerous. Suddenly, there was a knock at my bedroom door. Hey, Rhonda said gently. You want dinner? I made soup. Not hungry, I said. Everything okay? She asked again. You've been a little off. I hesitated. Just stressed. School. She paused. You know, your mom and I, well, we didn't always see eye to eye, but I never stopped caring about you too. I didn't say anything. I hope you know that, she added. I waited until I heard her walk away, then sat on my bed and whispered to myself, I wish I did. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, clutching Mom's notebook. At one point, I got up and checked on Jenny. She was still curled up on the couch, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. I stood there a long time, watching her chest rise and fall. If this whole thing got worse, if something happened to me, who would take care of her? Certainly not Rhonda. Not if what Mom said was true. I knew what I had to do. Tomorrow, I was going back to Redfield. But this time, I wasn't going to the diner. I was going to find Mr. Collins. I left before sunrise. Packed a bag with some clothes, granola bars, a bottle of water, and Mom's notebook. I made peanut butter sandwiches for Jenny and left a note for Rhonda pretending I was spending the day with a friend from school. If I told her the truth, I wasn't sure I'd be allowed to leave the house again. I caught the first bus back to Redfield, gripping the seat the whole ride like the road might fall out from under me. The black car, the strange man at the diner, Mom's note. Everything screamed danger. But there was no other choice. I had to see this through. Once I reached the edge of town, I didn't stop at the diner. Didn't stop at the garden or the post office or anywhere near the main road. I walked 2 miles east, through dusty fields and old fences, until I reached a narrow dirt path lined with rusted signs. One of them was tilted sideways and read, Collins Family Farm, private property. This had to be it. I followed the path until it curved uphill, where a weather-beaten farmhouse stood crooked against the skyline. The windows were covered. The porch sagged in the middle. There was an old barn off to the side with a collapsed roof, and a windmill that didn't turn anymore. I stepped closer, heart pounding. The air smelled like hay and engine oil. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once, then went quiet. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. My voice cracked as I called out, Mr. Collins? Nothing. Then, just as I turned to leave, the door creaked open. A man stood in the shadows. Tall, lean, maybe in his 60s. His eyes were sharp, but his mouth never moved. He stared at me like he already knew why I'd come. You're Claire's daughter, he said quietly. I froze. How did you? She told me you might show up. Said if things got bad, you'd come looking. Where is she? He stepped aside and motioned for me to come in. The inside of the farmhouse smelled like old wood and something bitter, like dried herbs or medicine. She was here, he said, but not for long. Stayed 2 nights, asked for help. Help with what? I asked, following him into a dusty sitting room. He sat in a leather chair that squeaked beneath him. She was being followed. Had been for months. Thought she could hide out here, but she was wrong. I sat down across from him, notebook in my lap. Who was following her? He looked out the window for a long time before answering. There's a man, used to be in business with your father. Real quiet type, dangerous in his own way. When your mother left your dad, she didn't just run away from a bad marriage, she ran from something bigger. Like what? I asked. He finally looked at me. Money. Lots of it. Money your dad hid. Money he never told your mom about. Until one day, he needed her help to cover it up. I blinked. Are you saying my mom was involved in something illegal? She wasn't involved, he said firmly. She was used. He leaned forward. Your father stole from some very serious people. Laundered it. Hid it in fake businesses, offshore accounts. When it started falling apart, he tried to drag Claire into it. I sat back, stunned. That's why she left. I asked. She had no choice, he said. She took you too, and ran. Changed names. Hid every trace of her past. But eventually, someone picked up her trail. That matched what Daniel had told me. Only now it made even more sense. Why didn't she tell me this? I whispered. Because she thought she could protect you by keeping you in the dark, he replied. Then he stood up and walked to a cabinet by the wall. He pulled out a small metal lockbox and handed it to me. She left this behind. Said to give it to you if you ever came. I opened it slowly. Inside were 3 things, a USB flash drive, an old flip phone, and a photograph of my mom holding a baby. On the back of the photo, one line was written in all caps. If you're reading this, I didn't make it. I stared at it, hands trembling. She said that if anything happened to her, the flash drive would explain everything, Collins added. She said it had names, records, evidence. I slipped it into my pocket, suddenly aware of just how big this was. What do I do now? I asked. He walked me to the door and looked out at the trees swaying in the wind. You run, he said. And you don't stop until you find someone you trust. I paused. What about you? He didn't answer, just gave me a small nod and closed the door behind me. By the time I made it back to the bus station, my hands were still shaking. I clutched that flash drive like it was made of gold, or something more dangerous. Because now I knew it wasn't just secrets or stories anymore. It was proof. Proof of what my dad had done. Of what my mom had run from. Of why she might never come back. The bus ride home felt longer than usual. I kept staring out the window, expecting that black car to show up at any minute, to cut me off, to grab me before I got back to Jenny. But the road stayed empty. When I got home, it was already dark. Rhonda's car was gone. I unlocked the door with trembling fingers, rushed inside, and found Jenny asleep on the couch again, TV still flickering in front of her. I kissed her forehead and tiptoed into the kitchen, pulling out the flash drive from my pocket. I grabbed my laptop and plugged it in. At first, nothing happened. Just a plain folder with one file inside. Read__first. PDF. I clicked. Inside were scanned documents, bank statements, names, shell company records. Dozens of files, each linked to another. I didn't understand half of it, but one thing was clear. These weren't just receipts. They were evidence. There were emails from my dad to people with strange names, talking about transfers, off-the-books payments, even threats. One subject line stood out. She knows too much. If she talks, we're finished. My throat tightened. Mom hadn't run just out of fear. She ran because she was being hunted. Because if she ever exposed what she knew, they'd come for her. Or for us. There was also a document called Backup Plan, S.H. My initials. It was a letter written by Mom. If you're reading this, then things didn't go the way I hoped. I wanted to keep you safe. I thought I could run fast enough, far enough. But the truth catches up eventually. Sarah, you're smarter than I ever was. You've seen more than any child should. But now, you have the one thing I never did, a choice. This drive has what you need to end it. If you go to the police, be careful. Not everyone is clean. There's a man named Marcus Dean. He works in internal affairs. He was one of the few who helped me once. Trust him. No one else. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of everything crushing down at once. I had evidence that could put my father, and possibly others, in prison. But if the wrong person found out I had it, they'd come after me too. And Jenny. Then a noise broke the silence. Footsteps. I turned off the screen and yanked the drive out, heart pounding. The door creaked open slowly, and Rhonda walked in. She stared at me. I stared back. You're up late, she said. I nodded slowly. Couldn't sleep. She walked closer. That same smile she always wore, sweet on the surface, but this time I noticed it didn't reach her eyes. I stopped by earlier, she added. You weren't home. I went to the library. I lied. She nodded like she didn't believe me. You're a lot like your mom, you know. Always curious. Always digging where you shouldn't. My stomach dropped. What's that supposed to mean? I asked. She shrugged. Just be careful, okay? Then she walked past me, into the kitchen, humming some old tune she used to play on road trips. But now it sounded wrong. Like something was off key. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat next to Jenny's bed, watching her breathe, clutching that flash drive like it was the only thing keeping us alive. I didn't know who to trust, not even the people I thought I knew best. But I had one name, Marcus Dean, and in the morning, I was going to find him. The next morning, I packed my bag again, but this time, I didn't plan on coming home right away. I printed a few of the most important files from the flash drive and tucked them inside a math textbook in case someone checked my bag. I gave Jenny her favorite cereal, kissed her on the forehead, and told her I was heading to school early. Rhonda didn't question it. She was sipping coffee in her robe, scrolling her phone like nothing in the world was wrong. But I noticed the door to her room had a new padlock on the inside. That hadn't been there yesterday. Something told me Rhonda knew more than she was letting on. I left without another word and headed straight to the city courthouse downtown. I figured if Marcus Dean was in internal affairs, someone there would at least know how to reach him. After nearly an hour of waiting and getting passed from one office to another, a clerk finally scribbled down a phone number and an address on a sticky note. "Don't know if he still works there," she mumbled. "Transferred a while back, I think. Quiet guy." That seemed to be a trend. The address was a small brick building across town, just a door with frosted glass and a metal mailbox stuffed with envelopes. I knocked, and for a second, I didn't think anyone would answer. Then a man opened the door. Late 40s, maybe 50s. Shirt sleeves rolled up, tired eyes behind square glasses. He looked me over, confused. "Can I help you?" I cleared my throat. "Are you Marcus Dean?" He hesitated. "Who's asking?" "I'm Claire Harper's daughter," I said. His face changed instantly. He stepped aside and motioned me in without a word. Inside was a small office, bare bones. Just a desk, a few chairs, and filing cabinets that looked like they hadn't been opened in years. Once the door closed, he turned to me. "You shouldn't be here." "I had no choice," I said, pulling out the flash drive. "She told me to find you. She said you were the only one who could help." He stared at it, then at me. "She's still alive?" I don't know." I explained everything. The letters, the attic, the man at the train station, the box from Mr. Collins. I even showed him the printed emails and the photo with "If you're reading this, I didn't make it." He didn't say a word until I was finished. Then he sat down and sighed. "Your mom was brave. Braver than most people I've known in this job. You helped her once, right?" He nodded. "She came to me after she ran. Gave me just enough info to know something big was going on, but not enough to act on. She was scared. Said she didn't know who to trust." "Can you do something now?" I asked. "Can you take this to the right people?" He picked up the flash drive and studied it. "If this is what you say it is, then yes. But it won't be simple. People tied to this, some of them wear suits and badges. Some work behind desks at the agencies you think are safe." I felt a chill run through me. "I can protect you and your sister," he added. "But it means going away for a while. Witness protection. New names. New home." I froze. "Leave everything behind." He nodded. "That's what your mom did." I sat there, quiet, until a thought suddenly hit me. "Wait," I said. "What if she's still out there? Hiding like you said. Wouldn't she try to contact me again?" Marcus looked at me seriously. "Maybe. But if she's still alive, she's in deep hiding. And if word gets out that you're looking for her, you could lead the wrong people straight to her." He let that sink in. I looked at the photo of Mom holding baby Emily one more time. "I just want Jenny to be safe," I whispered. He stood up and opened a locked drawer in his desk. "Then we start now." He handed me a prepaid phone, a change of clothes, and a plain envelope. Inside were instructions: where to meet, what to bring, when to leave. "Go home," he said. "Act normal. I'll call tonight. We'll extract you both quietly." I left that office feeling like I was walking through fog. Nothing felt real anymore. Not the sidewalk under my shoes, not the sun in the sky. But as I reached the corner of the street, I saw it again. The black car. Same tinted windows. Same silent engine. Parked across the street like it had been waiting. And standing next to it, leaning against the door casually, was Rhonda. I stopped dead in my tracks. Rhonda, standing there next to that black car like it was just another Tuesday. Arms crossed. Calm. Watching. She hadn't seen me yet. I ducked behind a newspaper stand and tried to steady my breathing. My chest felt tight, like my ribs had locked up. I peeked again. She was talking to the driver, same guy from the diner. Gray suit, slick haircut, eyes like steel. He nodded at something she said, then handed her an envelope. She tucked it into her purse and turned away, and smiled. Not the warm, goofy Rhonda smile I grew up with. This one was cold, calculated. I slipped away down the alley, hands shaking, trying to process what I'd just seen. She was working with them. The people who wanted Mom gone. The people who were probably behind everything. It made sense now. How she always showed up just in time. How she knew things she never explained. How she never pushed too hard when I lied. She wasn't clueless. She was waiting, watching, maybe even reporting. I made it to the bus stop and jumped on the first one headed back home. I didn't know how much time I had, but I knew this. I had to get Jenny out that night. Back at the house, Rhonda was in the kitchen, making spaghetti like it was any other evening. She smiled when I walked in. "There you are? I was wondering if you got caught up again." I nodded, avoiding her eyes. "Yeah, long day. You hungry?" "Not really. Gonna lie down for a bit." "Okay, hon." She went back to stirring the pot, humming again. That same off-key tune. Upstairs, I packed what little I could, clothes for Jenny, snacks, Mom's notebook, the prepaid phone for Marcus. I made sure to grab her stuffed rabbit and coloring book. Anything else could be replaced. I waited until the sun dipped low and the shadows stretched across the neighborhood. Then I told Jenny we were going on a sleepover. Really? She asked, eyes lighting up. Yep, just you and me. Like a little adventure. She giggled, clutching her bunny. Can I wear my purple pajamas? Of course, I said. I told Rhonda we were staying at my friend Leah's house, and that her mom would pick us up. She nodded like she believed me. But as I guided Jenny out the door, I felt her eyes on our backs. Watching. Waiting. We met Marcus in a church parking lot 3 towns over, just as the stars started to show. He was driving an old SUV with the plates removed. Jenny fell asleep 5 minutes into the drive, her head in my lap, bunny tucked tight under her arm. Marcus didn't say much, but he didn't need to. He handed me a file folder once we crossed state lines. New names, new school, new town. Just for a while. I opened it. Sarah Harper was gone. We were someone else now. The next few weeks passed like a blur. We settled into a small rental in a quiet suburb with neighbors who minded their own business. Jenny started at a new kindergarten under her new name. She never asked why we moved or why she couldn't see Aunt Rhonda anymore. Maybe she knew not to ask. I kept my head down, kept quiet, watched the news every day for any updates. There were none. No missing persons report on Mom. No arrests. No scandals. Just silence. Then one morning, a letter arrived in our new mailbox. No return address. Just my new name written neatly on the front. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph. Mom. Alive. Standing at a payphone, looking directly at the camera. Her hair was shorter, her clothes simple, but her eyes, the eyes I knew better than anyone, looked determined. On the back of the photo, just one line. Not done yet. I stared at the photo until my hands started to sweat. She was alive. Somewhere out there, Mom was still fighting. Still running. And somehow, she knew where to find me. Despite the name change, the location swap, the quiet life Marcus had built for us. It meant 2 things. 1, she was smarter than everyone thought. 2, we were still in danger. I called Marcus the second Jenny was down for her nap. He arrived 20 minutes later with a grave look on his face. Show me, he said. I handed him the photo and the envelope. No postmark, no address, no fingerprints. Clean. Intentional. He studied it for a long time. She's telling you something, he said at last. This isn't just a hey, I'm alive. This is a message. I looked again. The background behind her, faded signs, a phone booth, a cracked sidewalk, looked familiar. Can you trace it? I asked. He nodded. Give me a day. The next 24 hours were the slowest of my life. I cleaned the house twice. Sat on the porch until dark. Checked on Jenny every hour just to hear her breathing. Then Marcus came back. It's in Whitmore, he said. Middle of nowhere. Abandoned motel off Route 19. That's where the photo was taken. My chest tightened. Do you think she's still there? If she is, she's risking everything to send a signal. I didn't hesitate. I'm going. Marcus blinked. Sarah. No, I said firmly. I have to. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but I'm coming with you. We left Jenny with a woman from Marcus's agency, quiet, kind, a former teacher who didn't ask questions. Jenny didn't cry when I left. She just waved and said, come back soon, okay? I promised I would. We reached Whitmore by nightfall. The motel was exactly as I remembered from old road trips, cracked neon sign, peeling paint, a rusted ice machine that hadn't worked in years. Room 6 had its curtain drawn. A dim light flickered inside. Marcus and I parked out of sight. He handed me a small flashlight and his spare phone. If anything feels off, you run, he said. No hesitation. I nodded and walked across the lot, each step louder than the last. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Mom. The lock clicked. And there she was. Thinner, paler, but alive. She pulled me inside and hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. I was starting to think they got you, she whispered. But I never stopped hoping. I pulled back and stared at her. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why did you let us think? I couldn't, she said. The moment I contacted you, they'd know. But I had to make sure you were safe first. And now that you are. She walked to the nightstand and pulled out a second flash drive. This is the rest, she said. The names I couldn't give Marcus. The recordings. The accounts they used overseas. I took it slowly. Why now? She looked me dead in the eyes. Because they're closing in. And if we don't end this now, they'll never stop. Marcus stepped inside, stunned to see her. Claire. She nodded. Let's finish it. 6 months later. The trial was all over the news. My father. His partners. A web of officials across 3 states. Fraud. Conspiracy. Obstruction. It felt like the whole world had been asleep while they pulled the strings. But not anymore. The evidence Mom and I brought forward, along with Marcus's help, blew it all open. It wasn't easy. There were threats, close calls, even moments when we thought we'd lose in court. But we didn't. And when the gavel fell, it felt like I could breathe for the first time in years. Mom was offered full immunity for her cooperation. She declined witness protection, said she was done hiding. Me? I changed my name back. Sarah Harper. Felt like I'd earned it. We settled in a new town with real trees, real neighbors, and enough peace to hear ourselves think. Jenny's doing great in school. She still sleeps with her bunny sometimes, but she's smiling more now. As for Rhonda, she disappeared the day of the first arrest. Never answered her phone again. We don't know where she went. And honestly, I'm okay with that, because the truth finally came out. And for the first time in my life, we're free.